Hello? Oh, that's better. Okay. So yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. Um, yep. Okay, there we go. Yeah, no, I don't know what happened with my microphone there. That's very strange. It wasn't on mute or anything. It was just not working. Okay, I do apologize for the technical problem, but welcome to a very audible aimbot. Am I morally bankrupt or them? What was I saying? If you don't know, I usually use the opening of these to sort of talk about current things. Canada, the more progressive party, has just won the election, which is a surprise and a shock to everybody. I have been following the Australian election as well, sort of the lead up of that. I know that our good friend Jessica has just voted. I saw that on the old Discord. So thank you, Jessica. It is compulsory voting here, but you know, I do appreciate everybody sort of chipping in. I think that apparently not only did the Progressive Party in Canada sort of form a minority government, but the Conservative leader lost his own seat, which means he can't be part of government. That's the way our systems work. That if you lose the prime minister of our systems has to have a seat in the House of Representatives. So his own constituency not only decided they'd rather go with the other party, i.e. the community that he lives in, they voted him out completely. So his own community didn't even approve him, well, being a part of government in any way, shape, or form, which is hilarious. The same thing may happen over here. These conservative leaders, they basically followed Trump, and the rest of the country, Canada and Australia, look like they're going, hell no. And I can't say I'm surprised. I think that no, you're right, Deviant, and so good to see you. I'm going to do a few call-outs. We have Left-Handed Jedi. Awesome. It's good to see you. Exceptionally Average is exceptionally awesome. Jessica, look, I just mentioned you voted. Thank you so much for going out and voting. I know it's compulsory here, but I always appreciate when people vote. I think you voted early. I'm just gonna rock up on Sunday, to be honest with you. I'm just gonna rock up and do it then. Usually Lynn and I, we don't make a day of it. We usually like go vote, go out for coffee, just make a sort of thing out of it. So we're happy. We're happy with that. It's nothing like, going to a vote and then going to a bakery or coffee place and just, talking about stuff and what we did. And yeah, it's just nice. I like it. It's good. Yeah, I know nobody can hear me. I know. But Deviant, you're absolutely right. Travis is saying I poop upside down. Well, it depends on your perspective, mate. To me, you poop upside down. You ever thought about that? So perhaps the auction. It's weird that Trump, for all that he's done wrong, he's managed to solidify support for the more progressive people in other democracies. Like it's weird, isn't it? It's so strange. So yeah, I can appreciate the silver linings that come with such a fucking menace, quite frankly. Sort of, I want to show you this as well, and this is sort of what's been happening with Australia. Sort of, basically, Australia is there's repercussions to everything you do, and this is one of the repercussions. Like the US, like tourists are not going from Australia to the US, right? We've basically stopped completely. This is a drop that we haven't seen since we were actually locked down, right? So, that the only other time when that amount of people was when they were physically locked down. Like you can see the graph here. Look at this. The percentage change in visitors up and then absolutely plummeted, like just plummeted. And I want to sort of show you why it's a problem. So this is a story. I usually go, this is just one that I found on Guardian. There's a guy who was working in America, right? So he's basically left, re-entered. Border officials stopped him. But what's strange is he has a work visa, right? He returned from the US to Australia for a quick trip to scatter his sister's ashes. So he packed two changes of clothes, to carry the empty ashes to his home in the US. It was so brief he didn't even pack a laptop charger. He's holding a working visa still valid for more than a year, and he'd been living off the US East Coast for the better part of a decade, whereas American partner, apartment, work studio, and clients. So his entire life is kind of in America, and he's using a work visa. So he's done everything right, but apparently they took him in Houston, Texas. They just detained him. You do live here, don't you? Well, yeah, he works there. He's got a work visa. And the official said he was carrying human remains because he had an empty ashes urn. I don't like. He says a series of short interviews, including pastor, he was told he would be placed on a flight to Australia and hand a document informing him he was an immigrant not in possession of a valid unexpired immigrant visa. But he had a work visa. Eventually, Jonathan says he was allowed a single phone call made by an officer to his father. By that stage, I'd been missing for more than 30 hours. I mean, holy crap. He's got people expecting him at home. They didn't give me any valid reasons for canceling my visa. He says he has been told he can apply for a new visa, that he'll need to get a waiver to do so. I don't understand. It's so weird. And that led me to British tourist Rebecca Burke, who actually this kind of thing. She was a British tourist trying to leave the US, and she was detained and shackled and sent to an immigration center. She was actually trying to leave the US. She was basically had a tourist visa, but her living arrangements were sort of, she would stay on homestays free of charge in exchange for doing household chores, but they told her she'd have a work visa. She was actually trying to leave the US to go home. This is the crazy thing. The Australians now being banned from going into the US. This is crazy. This is basically going to tourists. Well, don't come. It's basically going to people who want to work in the US. Don't come over here. Do not come over here. Why would you put yourself through this? Seriously, imagine you're going for a trip to America, and a trip of a lifetime, and you're essentially being deported and shackled up. I mean, wow. You've been working in the US for a decade on a work visa. All I can say is, Chris and Liam Hemsworth, Hugh Jackman, get ready. They're coming for you, mate. The fact that you've got a work visa doesn't mean anything to these people. It doesn't mean squat. This guy had a work visa. Okay, you can tell him, hey, we're canceling your work visa, but holy crap, for him to be detained when he's got a valid work visa is just insane. It's insane. Could you imagine if we did that to an American in Australia? They had a valid work visa for Australia and we just detained them? What I think it is that Trump wants to sell his gold card, right? He wants to sell that. Well, you pay $1 million, you can come into America and act like you're an American citizen, right? It's just basically this transactional pay-to-play scheme in immigration, right? Like he wants to make this killing off charging people. Now, in order for him to really sell that, you have got to somehow create demand for that, because if there's no demand for your gold card, right, like, if you can just get a work visa, then you're not going to pay $1 million to get this silly gold card. So I think he's trying to generate demand for that gold card by basically just doing this Machiavellian crackdown on anybody that's in the country and punishing them for daring to come into the country, so that if they even consider it, they'll be willing to pay. I mean, it's not going to work. You know what I mean? Like, that is insane. You may get a few people who are millionaires and billionaires who go, yeah, okay, I'll pay for this. It's not a huge amount of money for me. But the real people coming over there are not going to want to go there. Like, you're going to stop so much tourism in America. Like, will that be worth just a few millionaires or billionaires who never pay a massive amount of taxes anyway? Is that really going to be that good for your country? And I'd say no. I mean, how much is tourism worth in the US? It's $1 trillion industry. I don't understand any of this. It's so crazy. Yeah, Jedi, absolutely. Australia is much the same. Our tourism is vital for us. So we're not going to be doing the same as America. Like, if you're American and expect, Australians might, lock me up and no, absolutely not. We don't lock up people on valid visas. No, absolutely not. Because the problem with that, not only are you going to sink tourism and people working abroad, you're also going to, well, it just ruins your reputation. Like, you have a good reputation as well if you promise something to some people, you actually deliver on it. Your integrity, basically. It's like, there's countries where, hey, you get a visa, like Iran and other, really despotic countries, that the visa doesn't mean much if the government wants to arrest you anyway. They basically can violate that promise, and they're not seen as very reliable countries to deal with. America's quickly sinking its own reputation as being a law-abiding, reliable country, and this is just another facet of that. That promise of, well, if you apply and go through the process, you have protections under our system. Like, if you told me 5 years ago that America would be one of the countries that you can't trust to honor, their visas, I would have thought you were crazy. At the end of Trump's term, even, I don't, like, holy crap. I really think that this is insane. Like, your reputation as a country to following the rule of law. I mean, think about what you think about other countries that, can imprison you for no reason, or detain you as a visitor for no reason whatsoever. You have a very low opinion of those countries. And I wonder why. Why is Trump 2.0 so different? And I think it's because of the people that he has around him. I think that last time he had a few people that at least understood the economic and political ramifications of his wild ideas, and they could somewhat say, hey, you can't do this. Like, this will cause X, Y, and Z that's going to be totally out of control. Like, it's just going to be a nightmare. Like, for instance, the tariffs, right? Like, he's had to, I think that Amazon is putting on their products a a section that shows how much of the product is going into the tariffs, right? So how much they've had to spend extra because of the tariffs. It kind of shows that he basically doesn't want people to know that they're the ones going to be paying the tariffs. He said that China will pay it, the overseas people will pay it, and we know that's not how tariffs work. I think in the first time he can say, hey, you know, someone said, hey, that's not how tariffs work. That'll be a disaster for the economy. It'll cause a slowdown. It will cause prices to rise. Like, this will be a bad idea. I don't think he's got this time. I think that the people in there this time are people with, they're the people from Project 2025. They have an agenda. They're willing to do anything to get there. Their vision of America is something from a sort of, dystopian future mixed with a regressive, puritan, Christo state kind of thing. Like, it really is this weird idea of what the future of America is. And I agree, Jessica. He tried to get his stuff through Congress. They got voted down. This time he's not even bothering. He's just doing executive orders and expecting them to stick. And I think some will, some won't, but he's trying to get enough through that it just changes the country completely. And I don't think that's necessarily for a good thing. I really don't. Well, yes, and I completely understand. Look, I mean, Canada was the biggest tourism sector for America by far, or international tourism, I should say. By far it was the biggest, and they've gone as a people, and I don't blame them. Forget it. We're not spending our dollars on America. Okay. Like, why would you? The man's threatened to, use economic and military force to annex Canada. I mean, why would you? Seriously, it is so ridiculous that he would expect Canadians to come to America after the way that he's treated them. Check my Discord. Okay, sure, Joe. Thank you. The team that runs our low-cost Amazon whole store has considered listing import charges on certain products. This was never a consideration for the main Amazon site, and nothing has been implemented on any properties. Yeah, I saw somebody talking about it, though. It was, yeah. So it's the Amazon whole store. Right, gotcha. Just when we thought Amazon might actually have a tiny sliver of integrity. Yeah. And I mean, I was watching this thing and somebody sort of said, this is very similar to the way that Trump handled in his first term the global medical crisis, right? Like that global medical crisis. It basically was, at one point he said, we should stop testing for the disease because then we find a lot of cases. If we don't test, we don't find the cases. It's kind of like, as long as people don't see it, it's not happening. As long as the truth isn't out there, reality has changed, so that's not the truth. And that's not how truth works, right? Like, just because you convince everybody of something does not make it true. That's really important. The truth is going to be grounded in some version of reality. It's not going to be, if you manage to convince everybody that the sky is green, then the sky is green. That is not how truth works. It's so wild to see somebody basically even suggesting that, if we convince everybody, then that will become the truth. It really does remind me of those sort of fascist regimes that basically use propaganda and these manipulation tools to convince people that their narrative is actually true when it's not. It really does. they really think that, hey, if I just convince everybody, that's the new truth. And, whatever reality is, it doesn't matter. It's wild to see somebody openly express that, though. Anyway. Yeah. No, I get you, Jessica, but I think that, I think that the truth is going to be something that is grounded in some sort of, if we're talking about the truth as in, the truth about objective reality, it's going to be grounded in some ontology or some actuality. It's going to at least have a foot in that realm, basically. And that's what, these theists say. They sort of say, hey, you have truth is a transcendental, and it's like, yeah, I think though that it's transcendent from when you say something or you make a model in your head and whatever it is you're comparing it to. So I don't think it's this, oh, it has to come from God. Why? I don't get that. Yeah, it's the El Salvador one does concern me, Deviant. It is horrible, absolutely horrible. The problem is, here's the problem. Not supporting a fascist regime, totally get it, but at the same time, you don't want to hurt the American people, because they did a lot of them did not agree to this. In fact, most of them didn't agree to this. I don't think Trump won the popular vote. I think that the system just has a bias towards Republicans because of the way it's set up. Yeah, not only that, but also Australia as well, Tori. Don't forget, Australia's been a really good ally of America ever since World War II. We've had really close relations, and he's fucking that up as well. The sentiment about the US is not great here at the moment. It is really not great. I will give you the tip right now. Yeah, Venezuela's not doing anything wrong. It's El Salvador. But, the El Salvador leader of El Salvador considers himself the world's coolest dictator, which is horrifying. It is absolutely horrifying. He's a populist. He's a autocrat. He treats his people like crap. And he's a horrible human being. Absolutely awful. And he's gets on great with Trump, of course, because they both want to be despots. Oof. Anyway, let's start on AIMBOT. Let's talk about happier things. So, what is AIMBOT? AIMBOT is basically saying who's right and who's wrong in a situation. It is essentially morality on Reddit. Am I the asshole? And we're going to be looking at some situations. How do you consider who's right and wrong? Where do you get your morality from? What's the ultimate foundation of your moral system? And if you don't say God, you've got to say God. Pimp my despot. Yeah, it really does feel like that. Like he tries to wear a cool suit and pretend that he's Andrew Tate or something. He really is awful, absolutely awful. Yes. Yeah. Like, that I was saying earlier, Jessica, that the weird thing that Trump has done is give a boost to the more liberal and progressive parties around the world. Like, it's really weird because he's done so badly for America. And because Canada's the same, everyone expected this Pierre guy to win. He didn't. In fact, he lost the election. He lost his own seat. That's the thing. He lost his seat. So he can't even be part of government, because our system works a lot like Canada's. So if you don't have a seat in the House of Representatives, you can't be prime minister. You can't do anything. You're out. So the conservative leader of Canada has been absolutely booted to the curb. So the same is happening in Australia. Everyone would have predicted, 6 months ago that Peter Dutton, the Conservative leader, would win. But Trump, he started parroting things that Trump said about, the woke mind virus and all of this kind of crap. And now he looks like he's going to absolutely lose, because why would we want someone like Trump in there? And I must say, our Conservative leader, Peter Dutton, he is a authoritarian guy. He is he's a nasty piece of work. He really is. If you look at his previous record, he is a nasty guy. Like, he is a really, really strict, sort of authoritarian, has no empathy for anybody else. He's not a nice person at all if you look at his previous record. From voting against gay marriage. Oh, but he's had a change of heart now that he's going for prime minister. Yeah, sure, mate. Sure. Even though you're talking about returning to traditional values and stuff, get out of here, man. Like, no one's believing your bullshit. Well, apparently some people are. I don't know why. I don't know why. Preferential voting, Socialist, Greens, Labour. Yeah, I definitely. I'm probably. I'm in two minds about the Socialists. I like their policies, but I think they're way too pie in the sky. They're really. I don't think they can actually cover it. I have to. Sort of saying a free education for everybody and stuff like that. Like, I get that. Hey, that's a nice idea, but I'm not sure that that's going to be. That's not really something that is practical. I think they also said half the defense budget. Like, I get that that's a really nice idea, but in the real world, we kind of need it. I don't know. I don't like the way that the defense budget is always increasing. I really dislike it. But at the same time, I understand the reality of having, potentially hostile countries around us. It's just a reality, unfortunately. Yeah, and there's good reasons for that. But, it's important to realize, mate, that it's not the American people that everyone hates. It's the government. We do differentiate the American people from the American government. Like, it's not you guys. Like, seriously, don't get me wrong. No, absolutely not. AUKUS is one of the most terrible deals that has ever been perpetuated on Australian citizens. It is an absolutely repugnant deal that, is just so bad for us and so good for the US. Of course, it was Scott Morrison that made it, because the guy is a fucking potato. Like, seriously, he is a moron. I don't understand that deal. And he endangered our reputation and our integrity with the French in order to do this terrible, terrible arrangement. Holy crap, it was terrible. Just fucking awful. And we broke a deal with the French in order to do it. Like, just all round, why? Just horrible. Just horrible. Well, yeah. I mean, that's a problem. Yeah, that's definitely a problem. But instead of going tear the country down, I think, yes, it could, but the problem is, Wayne, the only way you're going to get that is by legislating it. And in order to legislate it, you've got to have the two major parties on board, or the two parties that exist on board, and they'll never be on board because it's bad for them. So you've got sort of a catch-22 situation here. You can't get the two parties out without preferential voting, and the two parties have to approve preferential voting, ranked choice voting. Like, you're in a stuck situation, because those two parties will never ever allow ranked choice voting, because it's so bad for them. So they're not going to do it by themselves. I'll give you the tip right now. They will never do it by themselves, because Okay, so we're on Am I the Asshole? Well, we'll start off with the aimbotting. Now, this is consensual, solicited judgment. So you are allowed to judge because people are asking for your opinion. Like any opinion, opinions, opinions and advice are kind of weird. Like you can give opinions and advice, and I think that they're kind of just an evaluation from someone's perspective. Even though we are pattern seeking creatures, we basically will sort of say, hey, that pattern seems to be like what I experienced, and so here's my advice on it. No two things are exactly the same. So it's kind of like, be careful with advice from people that taking it, that they actually have the experience to give it. At the same time, be patient with people who are supplying advice that may or may not be best for you. So I think that when you're talking about, morality and moral systems and what we ought to do, some of that previous experience comes into it. But you can't get angry at someone for saying, hey, this is what I think, because all they're doing is saying, hey, I had an experience, or I have this moral system. It sort of says do this. We don't know all of the outcomes. So you've got to be patient and don't blame other people for the advice that they give. You can discount it or accept it as you want. Don't think we need ranked choice, just better real primaries. Okay, so that's where the party selects the leader, and yeah, I don't know that much about it. I don't think. I mean, part of me says that, hey, so when you have primaries, and this is a problem in these sort of kind of representative democracies, that you have the person going into the election, they have to get past the primaries first. So I don't know that the candidates will have the best in mind for the people first off, right? If they've got to get past primaries before they can even get the people to vote, their first loyalty will be to the party. And I think that's a bit of a problem. Trump's kind of broken that. He's absolutely broken that. I get you. But yeah, I was about to bring that up, Andrew. Absolutely. But Bernie was incredibly popular, and he kind of got shafted by the Democrat Party. Absolutely shafted. So I think that's why a lot of people don't like the Democrats, is because they will absolutely work in their own best interests, not in the best interests of the people. And that's a problem. The parties are always working in their best interests. And it seems to be a flaw in the way the system is set up, because the parties should be ideally working for the best interests of the people, not for themselves, essentially. But they are. They 100% are. Let's see. Yahooligan, a member for 19 months. Thank you, Yahooligan. Actually, I was I watched your Skeptic Spin had a bit of a coverage of sort of the Canadian election and the aftermath of it. And I was watching that, and it was just like, yeah, same thing's happening in Australia. Yeah, it's sort of Canada and Australia are eerily similar. It's kind of very eerily similar. I think we're just a bit more crude, and Canadians are a bit more sophisticated. I think that's the only difference between us, quite frankly. Canadians are my Commonwealth brothers from another mothers, and my Commonwealth sisters from another father. Like 100%. No one did. No one did. I don't think anybody did. But I mean, I don't understand. I don't really understand your guys' primaries as opposed to the Australia's caucuses kind of thing. Because in our system, you've got to win your seat to even be considered for prime minister. So in Australia and Canada, it's kind of the other way around, right? You're not going in there saying, hey, I want to be president. you have to win your seat in the House of Representatives to even be considered by the party to be the prime minister. So in that way, you've got to, instead of, sort of appeasing the party first, there's more of a balance between appeasing the party, and you have to get your community to support you, because you've got to win that local seat. Without it, you can't do anything. So, it's kind of like you've got to win the election first, and then the rest of your party has to vote you as their leader to become the prime minister. So, it's just a different way of doing things. I think it is better because you don't have to win the primaries first. So your first loyalty is not to the party. But, it still has that influence of the party there. Don't get me wrong. Okay, you dog. Yeah, I was mentioning that. Yeah, and I was sort of explaining if in these they're called Washminster systems. They're kind of a combination of the English Westminster system and the American Washington system of government. In both Australia and Canada, if you lose your seat, you don't even get to participate in legislative process in any way, shape, or form. It's not just that you can't become prime minister; you can't even do anything. You're out of government completely, which is just incredible. And I hope and I think that the same will happen to Peter Dutton, our Conservative leader, because his electorate, where he's based, is very, very marginal, right? Like there's not a big gap. And he is currently polling at 39% approval rating at the moment, which is shockingly bad. So I think that's going to happen to Dutton. I would love for it to happen to him. I really would. I mean, the guy's an ass, but like, for example, I'll give you an example of how this guy operates. There was a cyclone off, because he has a seat in Queensland, which is the Florida of Australia. There was a cyclone off the coast of Queensland, and it affected his electorate, his seat, right? He was off having dinner with some corporate people, didn't return, but the current prime minister did. He went into that area and helped people. Like, you know what I mean? Like ordered, the cleanup operations, actually oversaw it while this guy was off having a fancy dinner. It's, and seeing corporate interests and sort of doing political plays all around Australia. Like, seriously, it's like, remember when Ted Cruz didn't return to his state? He went for a holiday in Mexico kind of thing. It's kind of like that, so he is not doing well because he's a prick, basically. You had that seat for 20 years? Yeah, well, when you start to parrot Trump and Trump makes an absolute pig's breakfast of everything around him, it's not hard to see why, right? Anyway, on with the AIMBOT. Consensual, solicited judgment of strangers who you will never know is kind of my jam. I love it. Mind you, we never get the whole story. Do keep that in mind as well. We never get the whole story. There's always multiple sides to a story, and we just take these as they are. They're not curated. I don't pick these out. They are simply first hot off the shelves. Come with me on a journey to judge people we don't know. Am I the arsehole for telling my neighbor I am not her replacement daughter? That is a little harsh, but I can understand why you would say that. I don't think necessarily. I think that if that's the first thing you say, yeah, maybe that's a bit bad, right? That's come on, Jer. Let's talk about happier things. Okay. Yeah, all right. I suppose I deserve that. I deserve that 100%. If that's the first thing you say, that's harsh. If you've given hints that, hey, I can't replace this person, or you've sort of said, hey, I know you've lost this person, it's really bad, and you're trying to get that across and it doesn't work, so eventually you just say, look, I'm not your daughter. I get that. So if it's the first thing, then yeah, like if you're just she does something for you and you say that, yeah, you're a bit of a dick. But if you're sort of trying to get that across in the best way possible and she's still not getting it, You might have to say that, and it's not great, but I don't think it's necessarily immoral. But let's have a look. I, 20 female, have a neighbor who lost her daughter in an accident 4 years ago. Oh, that's terrible. Yeah. I have lived next to her for most of my life, and we used to be relatively close. These guys have a history of crossing boundaries and just being weird. Well, what's weird? Like, weird to you may not be weird to somebody else, okay? That's important to remember. But yeah, okay, so you feel like they've crossing boundaries, which is not cool. You know, that is something that you have to make sure doesn't happen, because if people cross boundaries and you don't do anything about it, you'll eventually just start to resent them. That's essentially what will happen. Being able to communicate, hey, look, you know, I know you may not think it's a big deal, but I have this boundary, and you know, I really would appreciate it if you do not do this thing because it makes me feel bad or awkward or whatever. You've got to communicate that, because they might have no idea they're crossing a boundary with you, right? They might have no idea whatsoever. There's certain things that we do that we're like, oh, isn't that normal? And someone's like, that is the worst thing you can do. You know, and we see this not only with different people in society, we see it in different cultures as well. You know, the Japanese, if you wear shoes into their house, they're going to be really upset. That is a boundary that is really, really bad. So, you know, it's important to say, hey, this is my boundary. It's not about you. If somebody says, hey, I have a boundary of this, it's not about you. It's about what they feel comfortable with. You know, I don't see a problem with that. Usually I'll just say, oh, I didn't realize. I apologize. I'll try to keep it in mind. Feel free if I do, you know, if I do that, please tell me, because I don't want to make you uncomfortable. That's how you know, deal with something like that. Hello, Titan. So good to see you. Mind you, you know, I mean, I am a bit socially outcast. So yeah, maybe I'm not the best person to take advice from, but that's how I look at it. I don't think that is true. I don't think that is true. I think you're creating rumors, Titan. How dare you? How dare you? I'm sure there's some company out there that he's friends with that'll give him some kind of, you know, look, these people in government, they always have, you know, they always go into the corporate sector in some kind of, you know, compliance department or regulatory department of that corporation, just because they have so many contacts in the government. You know, that's they can always get work from that, because they can ring up somebody and go, hey, you know, that regulation that says this, can we just, you know, is there a way around it? Things like that. You know, can you present a bill that will, you know what I mean? Like, they always will get work in companies, big companies, because of that, just because they have ties to the government, which is not right. After the funeral, she kept making remarks about how similar I was to her daughter, and her husband had to jump in at one point and say I'm not her, and my own amazing person. Yeah, that's probably the point where you, like, is that right after the funeral? Oh, that is insane. She kept on trying to invite me over to hang out with her in the backyard every summer too. In August 2024, this neighbor was drunk in her garage, and I was talking to her when she called me her replacement kid. Okay, that's like, I didn't say anything, because what the hell are you even supposed to say in that situation? You know what? That's a difficult situation, but you got to say something, because there's a pattern here that's coming. Absolutely coming. If you don't say anything, you know, you have to say, hey, I know you may feel that way, but you know, I'm really sorry, but I don't feel like I'm a replacement, you know, for this person. I can't be a replacement for them, because I'm not them. And I'm really sorry, but you're not my mother. I have a mother, and you know, you're a really good friend, but you're not my mother. You know, and that's yeah, it might seem better not to say anything at all, but later on down the track, things will get worse. So you're essentially delaying that conversation for a time when it will be a lot worse. And that's the problem with not speaking up. essentially you don't say anything, they'll continue the behavior because not speaking contrary to it, like not contradicting it, they will assume that it's fine and appropriate behavior, even though it's making you insanely uncomfortable. So yeah, exactly. Consultants. Yep. For the thing. Yep. Absolutely. Then she started acting like my mother in the same summer when I was living alone. Always asking me where I was going and who I was going with whenever I left the house. Okay, that's a problem. I told her nicely to stop and she was not my parent. She did stop for a while. Then she started saying I was like a daughter to her and was always trying to hug me every time I saw her, and that made me really uncomfortable. Yeah, you gotta be firm, unfortunately. And Chris, it's really hard too because you don't want to cause somebody in pain more pain, right? Like you don't want to say, hey, I'm not your daughter and I feel very uncomfortable when you treat me like your daughter, because it seems to, I feel like I'm dishonoring her memory and I feel like I'm not being genuine to who I am. That's a problem. That's a problem because you haven't said any, well, you have asked nicely, but yeah. At Christmas time, I get a long text from her basically trauma dumping about how her other daughter is in hospital and how her cat has an ear infection. And she attached a very graphic photo of a severely bruised stomach. Okay, so I had to do this with family members, right? Like I had to do this. I had to block a family member. My cousin, she would send these random emails with just random crap on it. And one was like an infected penis or something. And like I had to tell her, look, I've blocked you. Like you are not, like that is, the stuff that you are sending is just horrible. And holy crap, who sends that stuff? Like seriously, it was sort of, mostly it was really bad. The dad jokes that are uncool because they have like full of sexual innuendo and stuff. They're just, really crude stuff. Like I just hated every second of it. And I eventually ended up blocking her and saying, look, you've got a sense of humor. I don't have that same sense of humor, obviously. And it just there. I did not want to see any of that. I did not want to be the person she keeps using as an emotional crutch, which is fair. I mean, part of me asks why you round there so much. Quite frankly, I don't want to sort of assume anything, but yeah, it's weird. She refuses to get help over the death of her daughter and keeps trying to use me as a therapist, I would imagine. I told her this over text. I am so sorry I've had a rough month, but that last message was such an inappropriate thing to be texting me. You should not be trauma dumping on your 19-year-old neighbor. I am not your therapist or your family. I certainly did not want to see a photo of what I assume is your daughter's bruised stomach. What? Oh, severely bruised stomach. Oh, wasn't the cat. I thought it was the cat's stomach. I'm like, okay, yeah, all right. And I'm certain she doesn't appreciate you telling people her private business. Well, I mean, I don't know. Some people are pretty open with their medical issues. Some people are not. They're more private with it. I have no idea. But yeah, like if you don't want to see medical shots, I don't know why you would be. I don't know why I'd be sending it. I wouldn't send a picture of my daughters or sons or anybody's medical issues to somebody else. That's their business. I really would not. Like I understand that some people, they've had, pins in their arm and they send the x-ray to go, look at all of these pins in my arm. I'm like basically a cyborg at this point. And it's like, okay, that's fair. That's your own medical stuff. I get that. But why you'd send somebody else's is a bit weird. I will say that. Lastly, I need to make this so clear. I am not your kid. There is no our beautiful girl. I am not your daughter, and it's been making me and my parents so uncomfortable every time you've said that. I am not your replacement. What is that supposed to be? Is that supposed to be bitch? Oh my God. All right. no matter how much you want me to be. The fact that you actually said that to me one night was insane. Wishing you a better new year. What? I heard nothing back from her until yesterday, where she decided it was a good idea to flip me off and stand me down as I was getting in my car with my friend. We were confused, but you were confused about that? Why were you confused? Like, well, how did you think she was going to react? How did you think she was going to react? Oh my God. We were confused, but left it alone because whatever. But when we came home, she started yelling douchebag at me and yelling how I would never be like her dead daughter and how much better than me she was. Should I have called the cops for harassment? Should I just ignore her? She's obviously very hurt that I kicked out the emotional crutch. Well, I think you didn't just kick out the emotional crutch. You kicked out the crutch and then gave her a frigging flying elbow from the top rope, dude. Like, seriously. She had been using me as, and I do feel bad for her, but I'm not allowing her to keep using me as a therapist and making me feel uncomfortable. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I agree, Jim. That's the only people. Yeah, I don't send pictures of my medical issues to anybody. It's not, it's not something I do. Why? Yeah. Hmm. I don't know. I do. I must admit, when something started swelling, I asked for people's opinion on something, but I didn't send it to them to gawk at. It was just like, oh, um, yeah, wow. So I take exception to the way she did it. I think there would have been much better ways she could have gone about doing this kind of thing. Um, sort of at least showing some empathy to say, hey, I know you miss your daughter and I know that she was so special to you, but I can't replace her. And, you're making me feel uncomfortable. There would be better ways to say this. I think there'd be way better ways to say this. Holy crap. This is really hard because, you know, it's important to remember it is a grieving mother, so not to be just completely horrible. Yeah, and part of me thinks like this whole idea of trauma dumping kind of thing. I get that some people dump trauma and they're inaccessible for when you have problems. I get that. If they are friends, though, sharing bad news with a friend, I don't see that as a problem kind of thing. All right, not exactly sure what happened there. Today is technical problems here at AIMBOT. Here in the reading room, where we're having incredible technical problems. I just reloaded, so yeah, hopefully it will stay stable. Yeah, this is hard. This is hard. I think that she is being a bit mean, but that, like, I don't know. She already gave several hints and sort of tried to get her to understand. Maybe being brutal is what's required. You know, I don't know. I don't know whether, you know, that's necessary or not, because not in the situation. I'm very undecided on this one, because while that's brutal, it may be necessary to be brutal, right? Like she might have gotten to the point where you have to lay down, hey, there's this boundary. Um, I think that doing it in person. So the problem with SMS and written text is it has no tone and no inflections, and so much is lost when you're talking. And then you change it to text, right? Like, I mean, a massive amount. Not just the amount by body language, but even just tone, inflection, how you're doing it. That's why emojis exist, so you can give it some kind of tone, right? So you can actually show what you're feeling, because you don't have access to the usual tools. So sort of talking to her directly instead of texting her may be a better way to do it. Or else you could use emojis to convey your tone. It's not impossible, but it definitely is harder. You know, I think that sort of just laying it down like this in text is really bad. Like, it is. If you consider like a breakup, for instance, breaking up with someone by text is really bad, because it's just sort of so brutal in tone. You don't have the, hey, you know, this is something that has to happen, all of the regret. I had an amazing time while I was with you, or not, you know, like, depends on what you went through. But, you know, sometimes it's better to do it face to face. Yeah, I am not your daughter, skull emoji. Yeah, no, I got you. Emojis might make it better. Yeah, no, I agree, Titan, but, you know, I still think it would be better to do where you can actually speak to them and have some tone in your words. Like, you know, but, you know, nowhere in here is it like, oh, I don't wish you ill, and I do like you as a neighbor, you know, as a friend, but, you know, this is too much. Yeah. Yeah, I think that sort of everybody here is being an asshole, to be honest with you. I think that your lack of empathy for her loss, you know, I think that the mother, I think the mother's being a way bigger asshole, though. I really do. I really do. Yeah. Well, I'll put the poll up. I love to hear what you think. Please do vote. If you have any comments, definitely give them. I definitely want to hear them, because I can't trust my own judgment. Apparently, I have to look for it for other people. Was the poster right for telling her neighbor that she was not her daughter? It's weird, though. I mean, I get that the mother is acting so weird, because she's sort of like, "Oh, you're a replacement kid. You're just like my daughter," and then telling her after she's offended, "No, you can never be my daughter." Well, that's not what you've been saying, you know. That is not what she's been saying. So, you know, that's just out of hurt, obviously. No worries, Purple. It's good to see you. Purple rhymes with orange. Purple rhymes with orange is amazing. So good to see you. Agreed but accurate summary. What was? I'll go through the comments afterwards. I'll do my usual thing. So, what has the Redditors got to say? Rockology Adam says, "Look, I'm going to give you not the arsehole here, because your message was neutral enough to be civil." it could have been better. But the question needs to be asked here, where is her husband in all of this? Was he able to recognize her inappropriate comments at the funeral? Has he said nothing, done nothing all this time? Block her number, ignore her, but talk to her husband if you get a chance about how inappropriate things have gotten and why you had to send that message, just so he understands the fallout he's going to live through. Well, that's true. You know, I mean, it probably will be the husband that cops it. I would not encourage a 20-year-old female to talk to a grieving older man who is already ignoring his wife's continuing bad behavior. It's not her job, not her responsibility, and could make the situation much worse. It's very unlikely to do any good. Yeah, I kind of, yeah. Yeah. Everyone remember to do a bad carpenter or hit the thumb. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, short-sighted carpenter. Or long-sighted carpenter. I'm not sure. St. Elvis says not the arsehole. Dumping about how her other daughter is in hospital. What's JFC again? Jesus frigging Christ. She actually has another daughter. Yep, she has a second daughter who gets overlooked and forgotten by her own mother because she is obsessed in finding her dead daughter and everything. Oh, that's horrible. Yeah, so why doesn't she basically use the other daughter as a replacement? Because then it's not a replacement, it's actually her daughter. Okay, that's weird. That's kind of weird. Okay, yeah, no, I think I might change my mind. Like that's actually weird. What would be worse, having your mother projecting your dead sister on you or being the glass child against your dead sister? Both sound horrible. I'm sorry for her. Yeah. Holy crap. Oh, wow. All right. That sort of changes things. Wow. Okay. Weird. That's a good point. Like, she has another daughter. Not the asshole. This is wildly inappropriate behavior from her and incredibly unfair to you. If I were your parents, I'm assuming you live with them, I would have stepped in a long time ago. No, she said she lived alone. She was a young person living alone, 20-year-old living alone, didn't she? Most of my life. Acting like mine the same summer when I was living alone. Yeah. Like, seriously. Her obsession with you was incredibly unhealthy and scary. Yeah, I suppose I guess that's true for a 20-year-old who, I mean, I'm not a 20-year-old woman, you know, and as a 20-year-old guy, I probably engaged in a bit of sort of risky behavior. You know, I get that it would be different. Yeah, okay. Obsession with terrorists. Keep a record. Everything doesn't back off. Inform the police. I'm sure you would hate to do this to a neighbor and a woman who is grieving, however unhealthy, but this has graduated from an impressive intrusion to a potential safety issue. Mentally unbalanced people are capable of anything. Well, yes, you know, in general, but, you know, it's not like somebody that has mental health issues is capable of anything as an individual. It's just that, you know, people can get to a place where they are. I kind of agree if she doesn't back off. Like, it's very strange. It's very strange. Thanks. Unfortunately, my parents are living in Germany. It's just me and my dog. I do feel bad for her, but it's hard to keep feeling bad for someone who has been doing this for 4+ years with no signs of wanting to get better. I will definitely involve the police if she keeps harassing me. Yeah. Number one, be safe. That's true. But yeah, the fact that she's got another daughter, ugh. Joe says, keep a record of everything. This woman is clearly struggling with her mental health, not the arsehole. I have a front door camera and footage of all of the harsh things she said while drunk. I will absolutely keep a record of everything else. Yeah, do so. Yeah, couldn't read. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I kind of changed it. She's got a daughter that she's sort of ignoring while trying to make you her daughter. That's absolutely screwed up. And I get, yeah. Yeah, I think I might change it. I think that it's not the arsehole, to be honest with you. And she's not morally bankrupt. I you know, ugh. Let's see. What have the lovely people here got to say? Trauma dumping extremely dangerous. You can give someone vicarious trauma. Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. But there's got to be a balance between sharing what's important to you to friends and, you know, or you know, somewhere in the middle of trauma dumping and, you know, telling everyone you're fine when you're not. You know, like there's got to be a healthy middle in there somewhere where you're sharing the stuff that is worrying you without actually putting it on them. But I get what you're saying, Jessica. I do. Trauma dumping can be extremely bad. Yes. And you know, the thing that makes me furious is when someone trauma dumps on me, but when I share even the slightest thing, they don't want to hear about it, kind of thing. When I have a friend that, you know, tells me everything that goes wrong in their life, but when I say, hey, you know, I had a bad day today, they don't want to hear it. They're like, well, that's not anything to do with me. It's like, oh, holy crap, really? Really? You know, that is absolutely terrible, and some people do that. Sorry, Deviant says off the bat, but at the glance seems like a no, not TA, based on someone poster setting her boundaries. But let's hear the story. Yeah, I kind of still agree with that. Yeah, I was leaning towards everybody because she was pretty harsh, but like I said, she may have had to be harsh, and if she's ignoring her own daughter to focus on you as her replacement daughter, you know, that may be entirely necessary. Jess says boundaries are the key factor. A friendship between two people which happens to have certain vicarious parent-child vibes is perfectly normal, acceptable. Yeah, that's right. If both are fine with it, it's absolutely fine. You know, I think that sort of a parent-child relationship that is just sort of a friendship that developed and one person's older and sort of is like a mentor to the other one, I think that's totally fine, as long as they're both fine with that situation. If one of them has their boundaries violated, then that's a problem. Getting a replacement so you don't need to go through the whole mourning process is not mentally healthy. Yeah. And it's sort of like the denial part of that sort of, you know, stages of grief kind of thing. You're sort of going, well, you know, you're trying to fill that void with somebody else instead of actually acknowledging that it's there. It's just a sort of coping mechanism that you're trying not to have that void there, that the sense of loss, and you're trying to bandage it by pretending that somebody else is that person that you lost. It's really unhealthy, like incredibly unhealthy. I get what you mean. It's absolutely terrible. Deviant says, exactly. You're saying she should do exactly what she did. She told her she's not her replacement daughter. She's setting boundaries. No. Yeah, you're right. You're 100% right. Yes, I agree. Exceptionally average. Sounds like the beginning of a horror movie. You know what? I was thinking about like single white female. I know that that's not the same situation. Okay, so before you go, that's completely different. I know, right? But that's the first thing that came to mind. I don't know why. Like, that's about a girl that tries to be another girl, and this is about somebody who doesn't want to be a replacement. So I know they're totally different, okay? But I totally understand what you're saying, and I don't know why that movie sprung to mind. All right, I don't know, but yeah, I did have the same thought. I just it went by very fast and probably, you know, was not even it was not even relevant to the conversation. So yeah. I totally agree, though. It does sound like the beginning of a horror movie where, like, you know, a woman loses her daughter, gets obsessed with this girl, and it turns into this weird, you know, thing. What's it? Yeah, no, Jessica's right. Yeah, no, I agree. I absolutely agree. The only people I've sent pictures of medical issues to is my doctor, says Archer. I would probably agree. I mean, I think I showed a friend when I had like my foot was swelling up to see what they thought. But you know, it wasn't like I was just sending them unsolicited, or I wasn't saying, hey, I said I had a swollen foot, and they're like, how bad? And I'm like, well, you're on the internet. How do I show you? And they're like, take a picture of it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. It wasn't like I was just sending it to them out of the blue or anything. So, you're meant to keep 1 or 2 letters so we know what word you're using. Yeah, yeah. I can't think of another word except bitch that would be there, to be honest with you, and that is kind of harsh, But Deviant said, back in the day when I still had a Facebook account, I put out X-ray pictures of some of my internal bling. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, people can take you out of their feed if they want to, I guess. But some people aren't fine with that, Deviant. That's just something, that's something that some people don't like, and that's okay. Like, it's okay. Your Facebook post, you put up things that are suitable for you and you're comfortable with, and then people can decide whether they want to in on that feed or not. It's not like you're forcing them to look at them. Titan says the woman using the fact that she's a grieving mother act badly. Likely she has used other excuses in the past. Well, I don't know that, Titan. I don't know. These are actions not these are not actions typically associated with grief. No, transference of emotion can happen with grief. That definitely can happen. The usual people to find replacement. I thought that was sort of part of the denial stage of grief. And I think it is. Yeah, so there's sort of, your loved one cannot be replaced. Yeah, so yeah, so basically they call it substitution. You're trying to substitute the companionship in many marriages consists of sharing daily routines. Activities can facilitate them well. In other marriages, the relationship is characterized by intense sharing of intimate lives. In all cases, the death of the spouse necessitates finding substitute companions or tolerating alone. Okay. So, yeah, it definitely isn't unknown. When children who have significant roles in existing parental conflict die, the bereavement process may take a pathological one. Or Bach, that is from. This is off a NIH. I'll share it. This is of an NIH article. Reactions to particular types of grief. Just reading the part on child, basically. Conceptualize one mother's grief as follows: when the irrational journey of husband, she had prayed for a son to become ill on the premise that it would lead to increased marital unity. The advisability of having another child soon after the child's death is controversial. Okay, so that's having another child. Interesting. But I think substitution, it isn't, I guess it isn't that unknown. Like, it isn't usual, per se, but I don't think it's that unknown, Titan. I think that people do strange things and sometimes incredibly unhealthy things when they grieve. I don't think that's true. I think that substitution is a thing that can happen. Usually it's, from what I'm reading here, usually it's that they have another child to replace the one that died, like they will have another child. And they're talking about how, like, the next child can have their entire identity smothered by the identity of the previous one. So it's really not healthy as well. Deviant says, I mean, yeah, she went she should have went about it very differently in an ideal situation. And it's weird to me that she was confused by the reaction. But as a general thing, she did set her boundary. Yeah, that's true. And yeah, there's things that she could have done better. But does that make her an arsehole? Because, I mean, at the same time, she's only 20. I was not, at all very good at, diplomatically talking to people at 20. I would blurt things out as well. So I do have to give her a bit of leeway for being younger and probably not engaged in a lot of these sort of, these conversations difficult conversations that you learn as you go through life, because everybody has difficult conversations when they go through life, and you sort of get better at them. You go, okay, well, how do I address this without, seeming like a jerk kind of thing? Jessica said there are healthy ways to do this. One adult shares their trauma safely, the other listens and offers comfort, but it needs trust, boundaries, communication. Yeah, absolutely, Jessica. No, I get you. Yes. Yeah, I agree. Aunt just said, I thought OP did try to say it properly at first. Didn't she say, I'm sorry you're having a bad month, those pictures are inappropriate? She did try to get her to seek therapy. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I get you, Aunt Je. I do. I think you're a lot blunter than I am, and you'd probably agree with that. I guess I would probably try for something like, it seems to me that she's gone from very kind and understanding to absolutely brutally blunt. I would probably, just me personally, I would probably try going a lot more firm, but not that brutally blunt kind of thing. That's what I would do. But I totally understand if you disagree. She is violating boundaries, so that might be fair. Andrew said, I feel like you may just have to be blunt. Just say you understand what they're coming from, but I feel like you might have to be just blunt. Say you understand where they are coming from if you understand, but express your limits and boundaries. Yeah, that's true, but there's blunt and then there's brutal. It may have needed to be brutal, but I'd probably go through blunt first. What else could Aunt Jess says, what else could a 19-year-old neighbor do to help this lady? She tried setting boundaries, they were ignored. She enforced the boundaries. Yeah, no, I get you. And I don't think she's an asshole for doing that. Like, I don't think so. It's just, I probably would have gone through a process of escalation that isn't so sudden. But, don't get me wrong, I've got the advantage of being trained in de-escalation and, complaint resolution and all of that kind of life experience that she wouldn't have access to. That's not her fault. It's just, I know that if you go from being kind and requesting something to absolute brutality, people find it jarring. So I'd probably go through a series of escalation to, hey, this is completely unacceptable. I just want to make absolutely clear that I feel really uncomfortable when you do this, and this can't continue to happen. Okay, that's what I would go through. And then go to, look, this is unacceptable. I've talked to you about it before, and it has to stop. If this does not stop, we can't be friends any longer. That's the kind of thing. It's a bit of ultimatum-ish. I don't really like that, but yeah, it is a problem. But I get where you're coming from, Archer. As I said, you're a lot blunter than I am. I will admit that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the thing. I don't think that necessarily is wrong. I do things in a different way. That's all. Exceptionally average says the husband did call out the mother at least once, according to the OP. Yeah. But I mean, this situation, it's so rough, okay, because the husband might be dealing with his own trauma in his own way, and having like a child die can definitely form a rift in between parents, right? So we don't know what's going on there. It may be that the husband can't deal with her either. In that case, I think the poster's right. Like, the best thing they can do is get into therapy and let somebody with professional experience and who has been trained in this stuff address the problem. You know, there are bereavement counselors. They're not there for accidental reasons. They're there to help you cope with bereavement if you can't cope with it, because some of us and a lot of us struggle with losing our family. I had therapy after my parents died. You know, like it isn't this thing where you are weak if you're going to therapy. You should just be able to handle it. No, nothing like that. It's a hard process. You know, we've got to take assistance from people that are trained and have expertise in helping us with the problems that we have. There's nothing bad about it. Jessica says a lot of parents don't know how to emotionally deal with the fact their children have left the nest. Yep, they start befriending nearby teenagers just to fulfill that emotional need in them. Yeah, no, I get you, Jess. Yeah, absolutely. You know, and that is that substitution, you know, and so with bereavement and grief, we can feel grief for other things besides people dying. We can feel parts of grief for losing a long-term career. We can feel grief for sometimes people who have substance addiction problems. They go through grief in leaving that. It's very, very strange. It doesn't have to be somebody passing away for us to go through the grieving process. But substitution is always bad. It always doesn't work. It's not a good idea. And that's a lot of the time what they'll do. So, yeah, I do agree. I do agree. That info on the other daughter should be in the original post. Yeah, I agree, Jessica. It's kind of, you know, I don't, you know, we don't know the relationship they have. But yes, it is strange that she has another daughter to help her through this and be a daughter to her, and she's going to a stranger that lives next door, or you know, an acquaintance, maybe a casual friend that lives next door, in order to fulfill the role that she has a daughter for. It's very strange. Deviant Outcast says, yeah, I would have been scared as fuck if that happened to me at that age. And that's fair. You know, that's something as a guy you don't, you know, like I'm not a small guy, right? Like I'm what would it be in feet? 6'3", I think. So I'm not a small guy. And it sometimes is a struggle for me to think in terms of you know, what other people feel, or especially what, you know, you're a petite woman would feel in that situation. And I do try, don't get me wrong, I definitely do try. In fact, you know, I've been walking in the evening or at night, and you know, when I'm thinking I look angry, I'm very aware of this. Okay, you don't have to tell me. When I'm deep in thought, I'm like, and people go, "What are you angry about?" And I'm like, "I'm not. I'm just thinking." And you know, look, it's just the way I am. Okay, like I get that. But if I'm lost in thought and it's evening and stuff, and I'm a big bald-headed bastard on the street, right? And you know, I'm going the same direction as some young girl in front of me, and they cross the street, right? I'm behind them. I'm going the same direction. I don't take offense, right? Like, there's no way I would take offense. I would rather you be safe, and it saddens me that the world is in such a place that if you see some big bald-headed bastard behind you that is, you know, not very, you know, not very kind looking, I get why you would cross the street. It saddens me that we live in that world. At the same time, you know, I'm probably the safest person you'll ever be around, but I don't take offense, because I would rather you be cautious and be safe than make me feel any way about what you're doing. So I'm completely in support of this. Okay, I know that I don't look like a nice person on the street in the middle of the night or, in the evening or whatever. I'm aware of that. Okay. So I don't take any offense whatsoever. Right. But it does, sometimes I do have trouble thinking, oh, well, they're just doing this. I don't see why that's a, big deal, but I'm not that person. I try to, but I can't be. I can never understand what it's like to be a 19-year-old living alone. Who couldn't defend themselves if somebody a lot bigger than them attacked them, kind of thing. I will never know what that's like because I'm not that person. So Deviant, absolutely fair call. Yeah, and I. I totally get that whole bear and the man, which would you rather be with in the woods kind of thing. I totally get that. Um, it really is the case of, well, a bear will just kill you and eat you. It won't do some of the horrible things that humans do to one another. Like I totally get that. And I can never, like, men that are just going, oh well, that's stupid. You're not them. You don't know what it looks like from their perspective. So never ever be never ever fool yourself into thinking you know what it's like for someone that you're not. Right? I will never know what it's like to be home alone as a teenage girl with someone knocking on their door. I'll not know what that's like ever. So all I can do is listen to them, what they say it's like, and I get that, Deviant. So I'm really glad you said that. Yeah. Purple says, I've never been a 20-year-old woman, but I'd love to try it. No, you were a 20-year-old woman, Purple. May not have looked it, but you were. Maybe. I don't know. Can I say that for sure? I don't know. I would like to, I don't look at you and think, oh, well, you weren't a woman. I just don't think in those terms. To me, somebody that has transitioned has just always been a woman. They just look differently earlier. I don't know why. That's how my brain works. I just go, well, that's, they are what they say they are, because how do I know? What do I know? I know nothing. Come on, guys. We all know that I know nothing. We all know that. Come on. Deviant said, and I would have been competent or knowledgeable enough at that age to know what to do. That's true. And that's like what I was talking about. You get a lot better at understanding how not to piss people off as you get older. Some diplomacy. You have to learn that shit. And some people like Aunt Jer never learn that shit. I'm joking, Jer. It's fine. I'm joking. Tilting says, I clicked wrong, so my poster being immoral can be ignored. Okay, Tilting, that's fine. I mean, I'm glad you told us, but you probably could have gotten away with it if you never said a thing. I'll just say that. Hey, BTF Wayne, good to see you. Overwatch 2? Yeah, I was never a fan. I think my reflexes, I'm too old. My reflexes are too slow. I am too decrepit to be playing games like that. It's interesting because I used to play like the first-person shooters all the time, like Call of Duty and Modern Warfare and things like that, Battlefield and stuff like that. I don't know. I find my reflexes aren't up to the task. I'm more like strategy now than anything else because and building, crafting kind of thing, because I don't need like insane reflexes to be able to do it. Sterling Nash says, I think qualifying either side's behavior as immoral might be a bit harsh or extreme, but the situation could have been handled more tactfully. I don't know. No, that's a fair call. Look, morality is difficult, Sterling. And so terming behavior is immoral, you're not really saying they're a bad person or that they didn't have reasons for doing it or, things like this. All we're saying is what ought to have happened or ought not to have happened, right? And so the question becomes, how do you define those oughts? How do you structure those oughts to give you that designation? So really, I use secular humanism. So I'm sort of saying, for human well-being, what ought to have happened or what would be the best to happen as opposed to not happen, right? Or as opposed to something else happening. So I think that the way that I'm doing it, I'm saying, that if you lose a daughter, and you try to replace them with your 20-year-old neighbor, that's not good for your well-being. If you want to get to well-being, you shouldn't ought to do that, right? Is what I'm essentially saying. Now, don't get me wrong, some things, and morality isn't like, well, if you do something immoral, you're automatically an immoral person. No, absolutely not. I think there are moral virtues and moral necessities, like moral things that make you moral. Like for instance, if you don't give to charity, I don't think you're automatically, a completely immoral person. I don't think that happens. It's a moral virtue to give to charity. It is moral to, but I don't think it's necessarily immoral if you don't. Like this is the moral sort of virtues versus a moral obligation. Whereas if you commit murder, then automatically that you're immoral. You have to uphold certain standards in order for it to be a moral obligation. So there's all varying levels of that. We're not saying, well, if you litter, you're just the most horrible person ever. That's not what we're saying. It's basically saying if you care about the well-being of yourself, of the community, of the environment, then you ought not litter. That's all we're saying. It doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make you horrible. It's completely understandable why somebody would do this, but it is not conducive to their well-being is the way that I look at it. And that alone is why I call it immoral. So yeah, but I mean, there's other moral systems and the way they judge it, Sterling. It's all like morality is so complicated, mate. I'm certainly not saying that my system is absolutely the only way and you have to get on board. Deviant Outcast says, yeah, it's absolutely a thing. There are those who can't touch the grief in any way. It's not common. It goes to that degree, but it absolutely happens and is a known psychological thing. Yeah, I agree. I do agree. Hey, John, good to see you, mate. John Foppiano, ladies and gentlemen, joins the chat. John Foppiano says, I could only read part. I'd say that woman needs to join a grief group at least. Yes, I can't imagine my child. Yeah, no, it's hard to deal with. It is insanely hard to deal with, John. Yeah. But groups, I found group therapy incredibly helpful. It's very strange situation if you've never done it before. It's sort of you just tell strangers your issues, they tell you yours. It is that resonance of feelings that really help you through. Can be very supportive. I absolutely think they're very good. Sterling says, yes, they need professional help. I agree. Maybe they could attend a therapy session together and then pawn them off onto the therapist. Well, I don't think she should get more involved rather than less involved. I think that maybe an intervention is necessary, right? So in cases that somebody's behavior is causing a lot of harm, you would get together the people that she cares about to say, hey, we've got a problem here and we're doing this because we need you to get help. You're harming the people around you. And so I would actually say, no, don't do that, but definitely have an intervention with her daughter, her actual daughter, you, her husband, and say, hey, we totally get it, but we've got to step in and get you the help you need. That's what an intervention is for. Yeah, the OP, yeah, thanks, Aunt Joe. The OP did mention she tried to get her to seek therapy. Yeah, it depends on how you do that. That's why interventions happen, because it's people that love you and say, hey, we love you, but we want, this is causing harm. Rather than just somebody who's your next door neighbor saying, hey, you need to get therapy, that can be brushed off. It can seem dismissive. People on the internet tell me I need therapy all the time. Like, seriously, it can come across as just an insult. So that's why it's important to do it in the right way. You can't force people to get help. Yes, Sterling, I hear you, mate. Absolutely. Absolutely. Andrew says, lol, a foot taller than me. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't think height's everything. Look, mate, the amount of times I've hit my head on stuff, it's not that great. Like, seriously. Jessica says, geez, you're giant. I don't think so. Isn't like, I mean, I'm over 6 foot, but I'm not that tall. I'm not monstrous or anything. I think Australians are slightly taller than Americans, if I remember rightly. Yahooligan for $2 Canuckian says, I'm off to bed. Tip for the staff. Great service. Thank you so much, Yahooligan. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. John Foppiano says, shrimp. Yeah, no, I've met people that make me feel small. Absolutely. Absolutely. Just says, I'm short but heavy. No one is going to throw me over their shoulder and carry me off. All right. 190 centimeters. I'm 158 centimeters, and at 20, I was about 46 kilograms. Wow. Wow. You know, I'm about 112, I think, last time I weighed myself. So 112 kilograms. What is that? What do you guys measure weight in for people? Is it like pounds or something? That is 246 pounds. Okay. I don't know how much that is, but it's about 112 kilos. That means I was double your weight. Mind you, I was a lot lighter when I was 20. I do admit that. Andrew says, pop cute for the ladies. Yeah, the really tall girls. Yeah, for sure. For sure. No worries. You do you. You absolutely do you. Deviant says, so much for us Swedes being tall. Look, I've met a few Swedish girls who have been huge. Huge people. Jessica says, I know nothing. Yes, I am Jon Snow. You know nothing, Jon Snow. Blame it on the British side? Yeah, that's fair. Deviant says, I agree with Mark. You might not have looked at a woman like a woman at 20, but one nonetheless. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Exceptionally Average said, there may be no right way for that young woman to deal with the neighbor. Ask someone who has lost a child what it's like. Yeah, no, I get you. There may have been no right way. You're correct. You're absolutely correct. All of this is just speculation and, you know, just sort of, it is consensual and solicited judgment. So they're asking us, do you think I did the right thing? And we're answering on this show. That's essentially what we're doing. There may have been no better way. It may have gone worse another way. There's no real way to tell. Moral systems, they're designed to really go, well, what's the best way overall to do something, or how ought we do something? But that doesn't mean that every situation's going to go better if you do it this one way. That's not what they're for. All we can do is essentially play probabilities. Like, what can we reasonably think the outcome for this would be? So is that the way we ought to do it? You know, and a lot of people have different opinions on what that ought to be. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It may have gone wrong no matter how we did it. Sometimes there's no right answer. There's just a series of wrong answers, and one is slightly better than the other. I totally get that exceptionally. And I've been there. You know, there's no good action available. There's just a series of bad actions, and you pick the best one you think at the time. I totally get that. That's why, you know, if someone does something that I consider immoral, it may have been the best choice out of a whole bunch of really crappy choices. I totally get that. 410 is that sort of height that makes me go silly and overjoyed by cuteness. Very tall people, very small people makes me go cuckoo like a silly nilly. Okay. All right. Well, you do you. You do you. I must admit, like I do like cute. Cute is good. I like cute. Mungo, when a woman tells you need to pay because you're the man, tell her that's sexist and against the charter. I don't have a problem if I'm asking someone out on a date. Like, if I'm the one asking, I think that's more than fair. I think if they're asking, I think that's fair as well. I do like to have, like, if I pay for this one, maybe the next date you pick up. I think that's great. Like, that sort of says, hey, if you're interested and I'm interested, let's you know, let's take each other out. I think that's nice. But, you know, Fair enough. If I'm asking, then, if I'm asking somebody out and say, hey, would you like to go on a date, for me, I would cover it. I think going forward from there, you would have to talk about it. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. You would want to be philanthropic, but not financially capable. Charity simply the write-off. Is it a moral act of the donor? Yeah, if it's a tax write-off, is it a moral act? I don't think that the charity will care that it's a tax write-off. Okay, Sterling, I don't think they'll care. They want to help people, and if it's helping people, it's good for the well-being of society. Is it still the moral thing to do? Well, yeah, as opposed to what? As opposed to not giving them charity and paying tax? I don't, really we have to compare, like what's moral we have to compare with the other choices. We can't, sort of say, because what we ought to do isn't necessarily perfect. It's just the best thing to do from all the available choices. We measure weight in pancakes. Oh my God. Why do I feel like that's hilarious? A pound is like 0.45 kilos. Yeah. I'm about 53 now, so you're still about 2 of me. Yeah, okay, that's fair. That's fair. I deserve that. I deserve that. Oh, you got to go? All right, take care, John. Take care, mate. Okay, and next off the line. Beautiful. I'll wrap up the poll. Let me see what all you fantastic people voted. Poster has acted morally. Yeah, I kind of lean in that way, mostly because Deviant convinced me, and a lot of other people convinced me. Jessica convinced me as well. So a lot of people convinced me, actually. Aunt Jer definitely convinced me. Yeah, not in this one, News. Yeah, this isn't the right place for it, mate. But sometime, sure. Let's see. That is an ad. Okay, so obviously traumatized. Ugh. Am I the asshole for playing a voice recording to prove to my friend that her daughter isn't nonverbal? No. Absolutely not. I don't. Like, if she's saying she's nonverbal, my first instinct is absolutely not. If I mean, seriously, it's like somebody being caught out for lying, and they're like, "Oh, well, you shouldn't have caught me out." What? No, you shouldn't have lied in the first place. What are you talking about? So I, 30 female, has a friend, 34, that has a non-verbal daughter, 3 female. What, they're 3? Okay. I mean, let's call her Ali. I watch her 4 days out of the week in my in-home daycare. I require contracts for every child. She has never filled out the special needs section. At no point when she asked me to take Ali did she mention any kind of speech delay or non-speaking issue. Although Ali didn't speak much at first, too much damnation and condemnation for these Christians to me anymore. Yeah, imagine what I get, brother. Imagine what I get. Seriously, dude. I don't know what to tell you. It kind of goes with the territory. I'd probably find some people who are left. Find some Unitarians or something. They're pretty open to everybody. They're kind of doing their own thing. Although Ali didn't speak much at first, I figured she was shy. She communicated her needs to me very well and said small things to me frequently. Sure. Last month I was in the bathroom. I keep the door barely cracked with a wedge so I can listen for any dangers that they can't walk in on me or see me. So as a youngster, that you couldn't shut me up. Like, seriously, I would just blurt out stuff. I certainly wasn't nonverbal. Yeah, I wasn't that kind of kid. But it sometimes does happen. I laughed and told her mum at pickup, what she said. Oh, like, so she walked by and said, "Ooh, you stinky." I laughed and told her mum at pickup what she said, and I was met with, "She isn't verbal. Why would you mock her?" What? What? She's a childcare worker? Non-verbal? Yeah, in-home daycare. What? Why? Why would they make that up? Like, if you had a daycare worker, why would you why would you make that up? Um, I don't understand. I reassured her that Ali has spoken to me quite a few times, and I thought it was a huge milestone from when she first arrived and was barely saying anything. She told me she didn't believe me and that it was messed up that I would make up something like that to upset her. I told her that I wasn't trying to upset her, but I wasn't lying either. I didn't press the issue further. What? So she's not speaking at home. She speaks in daycare, and you accuse the daycare of lying. So a lot of the time when I'm seeing sort of these anger issues, just me personally, I think about sort of where anger comes from. And sort of where anger comes from, anger's a secondary response. It's not a real thing. Anger always flows from, most usually it flows from fear or from pain, right? So you sort of, um, you sort of anger's just that fight or flight response. I mean, there's a number of things you can do: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn are the four usual ones that they talk about. And so, um, somebody may, in a fear response, become quite aggressive, and it's because they're afraid of something. Um, a lot of parents um, really have to, that they will meet any sort of fear of not meeting up to their parental standards that they have with a lot of anger. You know, I've seen it myself through various parents getting angry that their child is, in some way failing or has mental health issues or in some way doesn't meet up to their expectations, and you've got to wonder why they're getting angry, and a lot of it is based in fear. Like, have I done something wrong as a parent? Have I failed them? This comes out as sort of an anger, not towards just their child, but also themselves. So, um, um, yeah, good night, Dave. Take care, mate. Um, so the question is so the question that I have, and this just works for me, is not what they're angry about. The question is what they're afraid of. And I think it's that, if your child is talking at daycare but not at home, you can imagine the fear that would, are we doing something wrong? Have we failed our child? Have we, not made her a safe place? All of these things. And it's really hard to be a parent because all you want is that, you know, good environment and that good upbringing for your child. Like, I totally understand that. So, a lot of it can be denial of stuff. My child can't possibly be having problems, or can't possibly, because that would make me a terrible parent because I didn't notice it, or I didn't provide the environment, kind of thing. And all of these are just, they're distorted sort of perceptions of our lives, right? Like, you're probably doing everything you can as a parent. It's just a distorted perception, but it can be a real fear. So we have to be sort of aware of that. But, this is sort of, it's not the childcare workers' fault. They're just saying, hey, this child is speaking. You know, I think she would have an obligation, if the parents say, hey, we have a non-verbal child, to say, hey, she is actually speaking very few words, but actually speaking at my daycare. Like, she has an obligation to say that. Wow. Wow. Here's where I might be the asshole. I decided to record Ali, a voice recording, not her face, telling me her name and what her favorite animal is. Yeah. I had the full intention of showing Mum the recording, but I was scared at first because of her blow up at me. I didn't know how she'd react. After a few short pickups and drop offs, she told me it was water under the bridge and she didn't want to talk about it anymore. She even insisted I went to the birthday party. Okay. After that, I was just happy Ali could continue and I ended up forgetting I had the recording at all. Okay. So she's going to the birthday party. So this is interesting because then the childcare worker will get to understand what it is like at her home and, you know, whether she has problems vocalizing at home, or, you know, using language at home, which is, to me, it'd be interesting. Like, what is it about this home? And that's not necessarily the parent's fault, but why she doesn't verbalize at home. Interesting. Fast forward to Friday, about a month later, she had a birthday party for her other child. At the party, I was socializing with other family members. Honestly, I'm a total dumbass for forgetting her family fully that she thought she was nonverbal. I mentioned the funny thing Ali has said to me while we were reading an animal book. Turns out the person I was talking to was my sister, and she started yelling at me saying, "She is nonverbal. Why are you lying?" Both her and her sister start berating me, saying it's fucked up that I'm making this up about Ali being verbal. Wow. At this point, I'm tired of being called a liar. I have 2 disabled children whom my son was nonverbal for many years. I wouldn't lie about something like that. So while everyone was staring at me, I was scared and felt backed into a corner. So I, remembering I had the recording, decided to prove my case and played the voice recording. Everybody was shocked and my friend told me to leave. I told her I didn't want to cause issues, but I'm not going to be berated and called a liar. That's fair enough. She said I crossed the line for recording her daughter, and now I'm an asshole for embarrassing her at the party. Now I feel horrible and wondering if I should just have let it go. No, this is serious. You've got somebody a child who can vocalize and verbalize at a daycare, and it's your responsibility to tell them how she is going at daycare. You know what I mean? Like, if she was not socializing well with other kids, or if she's having problems, or if she's doing well at, you know, identifying animals and really loves animals, it's your obligation as a childcare worker to relay that information to the parents so they know what their child is going through. I don't see how that's any different for verbalization. That is no different, right? It is her obligation to tell them how she is going. This is so bad. Like, they don't even, why would you leave your child with a person that you don't trust? You know, like, you obviously don't trust her to do her job. I don't understand this. Extra edit for clarification, extra content. Whenever she'd pick up and drop off, she wouldn't ask me much other than, how was her nap? How much did she eat? And I would hand her the daily report. Yeah, daily report. Yes, she's doing her frigging job. Like, and then she would leave and not stay for small talk, even when I would try to initiate. I know these people have busy lives, so I'm not going to try and make them stay and talk to me about their life story. I also didn't do the recording to embarrass her anyway. I didn't mean any vindication by it. I can admit I should have shown her immediately after I recorded it, but I'm also human. I was afraid of a second blow up. Then after saying it was water under the bridge, I was just happy that she wasn't going to take Ali away, so I put it in the back of my mind and forgot about it. I feel bad about how I went to my defense, hence the post. I know it was unprofessional and unethical. I apologized profusely to everybody in the party and the family as well. Yeah, that is true. It was unprofessional. It would have been better to do it like in a one-on-one private conversation with the parents, because you are, you know, you are the carer of their daughter, and that is just between them and you and, you know, presumably the daughter. So, you know, I get that. I'll be putting cameras in my home that everybody will have access to, as well as updating all the contracts, let the parents know what is going to happen going forward. Peace of mind for everybody sounds good to me. Also, I'm making a call to CPS about the situation and see what they have to say. Yeah, I probably would. It is a very strange situation. You've got a child that can verbalize at daycare but can't verbalize at home. It's very weird. It's very strange. Getting CPS involved is incredibly bad, but I mean, she has an obligation to report it. And you know, ideally the question is, what's the best for the child? What's the best for Ali here? And I I I don't know. I don't know. It's just she's trying to be as professional as possible. I would absolutely say she's not being the asshole. She's trying to be as professional as possible and do what's best for the child. Oh, sorry, you're going. Sorry, Deviant. Before you go, no, not the asshole. Take care. Take care, sincere heart. Oh, thank you for thank you so much, Deviant. It's always a pleasure with you here. You're just amazing. Thank you. It's 4:50 a.m. No, stop. Go to bed, Deviant. Yeah. You go do your thing. Thank you so much, Deviant. Deviant's one of my favorite people in the stream. One of my favorites, definitely. You damn outcast. Okay, so I'm going to vote this up. This is definitely not it. Like, seriously, she is trying to do everything she can to help the family. Like, if the family was doing the right thing, they would be saying, okay, how can we, like, if you've got a non-verbal child, right? If I had a non-verbal child and the daycare worker said, yeah, she's very, very quiet, but she has said a few things, I would be saying, how, like, okay, let's talk to you in depth about how you reached her and how you made her feel safe enough to, like, you know what I mean? Like, how much could you learn from this person? Like, don't just go, oh, well, you're a liar. I just see this as really bad. Like, if you have the best in mind for the well-being of your child, what are you doing? Just calling her a liar and stuff. I don't know. It's very strange to me. Was the poster immoral for recording a non-verbal child? And there might be a very good reason why she's non-verbal at home. Like, there may be something for CPA to investigate. I don't know. I mean, that is a pretty extreme act to get them involved, but this is not a normal situation. And if you are somebody like a childcare worker, you've got an obligation to report unusual situations. Like, it is your obligation to do so. So I think the poster is just trying to be as professional as possible, like as professional as humanly possible, under the family blowing up at her, the child talking to her and being told that she's a liar. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. Let's see. Fun Effective says, not the arsehole. I can imagine what this child is going through, being treated like she's completely non-verbal when that's not the case. In fact, I can't help but wonder in the way the mother seems to react may have a part to play in why she's not verbal around her mother. Possibly, yeah, possibly. That being said, you did the right thing trying to bring this to the mother's attention in a polite and calm manner. Her reaction was unreasonably abrasive. As a parent of a non-verbal child would be over the moon to hear that child is, yes, this. Right. Like, if you have a non-verbal child, why can't, like, you'd be going, how did you do this? Like, did you have anything that you did? What was the environment like? Can we change anything at home? Like, why wouldn't you be, my point is, you might not be over the moon because it might go, what are we doing wrong? But you at least want to know how you broke through to a non-verbal child. If you're a parent, right, like, don't get me wrong, some parents are wonderful, amazing, but if you're a daycare worker that has sort of been there for the raising of hundreds, if not thousands of children, you may have insights into child behavior that a parent just doesn't have, right? Like, we've got to understand that not everybody is an expert in everything. That's why we have child development psychologists. That's why we have, you know, teachers and people that have been trained to deal with problems in childhood. You don't have to know everything as a parent. All you need to do as a parent is be open to people giving you assistance who are better trained and have more experience in it. That's all, right? Just be open to that. It doesn't mean what they're saying is absolutely right. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It just means, like, if you want to teach your child football and, you know, you may not do that yourself. You have a football coach. You know, you may be able to teach them the rudiments of football, but they're much better off, and they will be way better with a professional that knows what they're doing and not just some random parent. Like, that's nothing on you. It doesn't make you a worse person. It's just other people have specialities, and we've got to accept this. I don't think recording the child's voice in the wrong. I think the only wrong thing that she did is playing it at a party in front of everybody, not on a one-on-one situation with the parents, or, you know, or one-on-two, or whatever the situation is, not just playing it privately for the parents. I think that was the mistake that was made. As she said, she apologized for it profusely, acknowledged it was a mistake. So I don't think it's immoral. She's acknowledged and tried to rectify that mistake. That's not immoral. That's what she ought to be doing if she makes a mistake, an honest mistake. And I think that it was, because she owned it, tried to make amends for it. So I don't think she's immoral at all. I think that she's a moral person. You weren't posting it all over the internet. You weren't going behind the mother's back and showing the people the recording. You only did it after she berated you for lying, which wasn't the case. You recorded the voice specifically to try and update the mother on her daughter's condition, as having that updated knowledge is important. Yes, this updated knowledge is important in any condition. I would normally say it may have been a better option to ask permission to record the child's voice, but judging the way you described the mother, I feel like that would probably have led to more conflict in the first place. Edit is also, she's embarrassed you at the party, not the other way around. It's not your fault she feels embarrassed for not knowing her own kid better. That is true. You know, like, I get that. That is true. The poster said, unfortunately, I use the term friend loosely. I used to work at the daycare her daughter went to when she was a baby. I was the baby room lead teacher. I left the daycare about 2 years ago after dealing with other teachers trying to verbally, emotionally abuse the toddlers. I called the state on them, and they told me to keep my mouth shut or I'll be fired. Oh, that's terrible. Look, this poster seems to have some integrity. When she got wind that I had a home daycare about 2 months ago, she called and asked for a spot. Up until a month ago, she seemed nice and well put together, but now I'm not so sure. Look, people can be strange about their kids, especially if they have conditions or issues that they may feel it reflects badly on them. And that's hard for a parent to you know, to confront. It is hard. But I don't think it's necessarily the parent's fault this is happening. I really don't think so. This made my cool CPS spidey senses tingle. What on earth is happening in that home that this child will not talk in front of her family? Possibly it's something else. It could be that they're just, you know, it could be just that they're very, very extroverted. The child gets talked over, doesn't get to say what they want. It's not necessarily any neglect or abuse. It could just be the situation. I don't know. That's what, you know, you could not say from just a you know, cursory, well, she talks at daycare and doesn't at home. It's not, you know, definitely. The poster says, I used to have Ali at daycare I was previously working at when she was a baby. I end up leading, yeah, the other teachers, we saw that. My friend said she continued at the daycare up until 2 months ago. She confided in me saying Ali was abused at the daycare but didn't get into details. Right. Okay. So maybe she was verbally or emotionally abused. So it might be something to do with the previous daycare and not home, which is, you know, this is what I'm saying. It can be all kinds of things, but finding out is important. Since then, I've noticed Ali gets scared very easily. If you drop something, she immediately gets sad and says, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Oh, that's so tragic. Oh, sweetie. No, it's fine. It's fine. But other than that, I haven't seen really any sort of signs. I'm not a psychologist of any sort. I've taken classes on child abuse, but I think I need a refresher course. You know what? The more I read from this daycare worker, the more I like them. You know, they really are saying, hey, I want to do what's best for these children. I'm actually really impressed. I'm going to upvote you all the way up. Like, seriously, they seem professional, kind, caring. You know, I don't know why you would blow up at this person. I'm not really here why. Look, and this is where Child Protective Services should be looking at it. Maybe if she did have a bad experience at previous daycare, then, you know, hopefully they will do something about that. And she says she's called CPS on them before, and I don't see any reason not to believe her that they were abusive. But, you know, no child should be getting so upset at simply dropping something. You know, people drop stuff all the time. Hell, children are in they're developing their reflexes and their hand-eye coordination. Why would they get upset for dropping something? You know, drop things all the time. That's so bad. Like, yeah, that looks really bad. I'm not really here why says not the answer. Why are they so fixated on the child being non-verbal, like it's some kind of badge of honor? Are they getting some kind of benefits out of it? Poster says, I'm not really sure. My son was non-verbal until he was almost 5. His first word was pizza, lol, and I was so elated that I threw a party. Yeah, nice. Look, I like this person. I really do. They're awesome. Absolutely awesome. Munchausen's by proxy? Yeah, I wouldn't jump to that, Reddit. Come on now. It may just be that they, you know, are strict on children, and, you know, that due to something that happened at a previous daycare could have made her sort of clam up. And yeah, the better thing to do is find out what's going on at the daycare that she feels comfortable enough to talk, and try to replicate that at home. Okay, that's what you should be doing right now. Or if she has had something happen to you that could be abuse, that we get her some therapy and talk to somebody who's a professional, because there are child psychologists that they are there to help. Old Butter says, that's a bizarre reaction for hearing your non-verbal daughter speaking. I would be elated nor mad at the messenger. I wonder if they don't want her to speak. It does seem like a bizarre reaction. You know, it really does seem like a bizarre reaction. But people react strangely about their kids in some ways. Like, you know, I know that some people have reacted to their child having mental health issues with, you know, sort of anger and denial that they don't. You know, where you'd hope that they would react in a way that's like, let's get them support. They don't. They deny they, you know, have these issues or anything. Yeah. Let's see what the rest of the chat has to say. Jessica says, it's always telling when someone is told about something, no evidence or testimony is provided, and based on the claim alone, they jump to conclusions who is lying. Yeah, I don't know. Jessica also says, unless you make a promise to the child not to play the recording, you're not violating her consent by playing it. Well, that's, I mean, if you're talking legally, it gets a bit weird, because legally, I think that the parents ultimately decide legal obligations for the child. Morally, though, yeah, I don't see it as a problem. If someone's, so one-party recordings in my state, basically you have to have the consent of the other party, and in that case it would be the parents, not the child. It would be the parents, and so I think maybe you should ask the parents. But the exception to that in my state is that if it is to protect yourself legally for some reason, then you are allowed to do a one-party recording. So if someone's calling you a liar, and it could in some possibility be, say, used in a defamation case, or, you know, you're going to be accused of slander or something like that, it is one-party recordings are fine. So it really depends on where you are. Two-party, you may have a problem. If you're in a two-party recording state, you may have a problem. But one-party recording state, absolutely not. You can do that. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. And, you know, I don't think in your place of business, in your home and place of business, this is a home daycare, you would have an expectation of privacy. Like, you just wouldn't, you know. Thanks, Deviant. Yeah, you're a bit behind, Wayne. That's all right, buddy. That's all right. You'll get there. You'll get there. You'll get there, buddy. Parents of autistic kids who can't get past seeing them as a burden, just assuming they'll be a lifelong malfunction. Yeah, Jessica, I totally get that. And being on the spectrum myself, I really, you know, the a lot of them see like the worst case scenario, and we're getting better at developing kids on the spectrum into more high functioning adults. So they will always be on the spectrum. There's nothing that's going to change that, but we can manage it so that they can function as adults, and we're getting better and better at that. What will not help that process is basically trying to eliminate people on the spectrum because, you know, we think it comes from vaccines or some dumbass thing like that. You know, really what will help if we acknowledge the wonderful people that they are and just realize that they may need some assistance and will actually be of great benefit to society if properly developed. That's what will help. But it's convincing people of that, you know, convincing people that they're not just going to be this burden. They can actually be really advantageous. I know that places like banks are literally going out trying to find people on the spectrum because they are so good at detail-orientated things. You know, we just need to understand and develop. That's all. Sterling says, if we're using well-being as the basis of morality, then the OP acted morally. They need to get to the bottom of what's going on with the child developmental progress. Yeah, and I mean that's sort of meta ethics, Sterling. So my meta ethical sort of utility that I'm looking for is well-being of humanity. That's basically what I'm after. Others might not be the same. And I don't think you have to choose one, but I think that human well-being is important to most people, at least the well-being of them, their family, their community, their country kind of thing, you know, at least to a certain degree. So I think that that's fine. Other people may disagree, but because I think that, you know, human well-being is a subjective thing, there's nothing objectively saying you have to care about that. You know, I think that that's good for me. I don't think it's necessarily good for other people. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm not looking for it to be. It's just, you know, to have something compatible, to say, hey, we care about the same country. We care about the same people. We care about the same things like, you know, economic development and, you know, taking care of people. That's all I need. That's all anybody needs. We just have to work together. That's all. Genio says, why, and welcome to the stream, why was the mother adamant that her daughter was nonverbal? We don't know. We don't know. I mean, it's some people have suggested that, oh, she's getting some kind of financial assistance, and if the kid isn't nonverbal, then she won't get it. I don't know that for sure. It may just be that she does not talk at home. Her perception of her may be that she's completely nonverbal. I don't know. You know, like, I have no idea. Archer says the mother needs to take the kid to therapy if she knows the child was abused at the former daycare and she's nonverbal. She needs therapist. I do agree, Archer. I do agree. But, you know, sometimes parents have difficulty. If she's the one that placed her in the daycare, you know, she may feel responsible, and that might be a factor. But at the end of the day, as a parent, you've got to or I believe you've got to drop that ego of, she's not suffering from this, and really do what's best for the kid. And I agree with you. I do. Andrew says, right, my son wasn't all that verbal, so it worried me. So once I looked, sorry, Andrew, I'm just trying to pass this. Right, my son wasn't all that verbal. It worried me, so I got it looked at, but a lot of it was to do with he was just around me and not other children. But once he got into school, he excelled and was graduated out of his speech classes this year. Yeah, and absolutely. Just because a child is nonverbal around parent doesn't mean that they can't develop those skills. And congratulations to him. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just giving you a big congrats. Bigfoot Jesus for mini Andrew, mini Christopherson. Hear horror stories on Real Prime podcasts of parents so obsessed with power control that they deliberately disable their children. Yeah, and that's sort of, that's something else entirely. I probably wouldn't assume that. It's very hard to assume something like that, because that's the kind of thing, if we assume it, it can destroy lives if we assume it incorrectly. So I really would just say, hey, this is the situation. Let people with the experience and authority investigate it and see what's going on. Sterling says, I tend to be a bit cynical or jaded and tend to lean towards seeing the worst in people, but it does seem odd that the parent either doesn't know or insists the child is nonverbal if they can speak. It definitely is odd. Don't get me wrong. It absolutely is odd, Sterling. Like, I'm not saying it isn't unusual. I think that the childcare worker was right to investigate and report. Like, it is an odd situation that definitely needs to be reported in some way. But sort of assuming why it's like that, that's the mistake. We've really got to go in there and say, hey, let's find out what the problem is. Because a lot of the time when you assume what the problem is, confirmation bias kicks in, and you will find all of the things that will confirm your first suspicion. That's what, the theists do wrong. They assume a God, and then they confirmation bias all the reasons why it must be true. So, like, I do not disagree with you at all. And people tell me I'm not cynical enough. I mean, Titan Uranus definitely thinks that I trust people too much, and I'm definitely not cynical enough. But that's just me. I'm fine with it. So it definitely isn't you, Sterling. You're fine. Maybe I'm just too naive. That I'll wear it. That's fine. I'm fine with that. Exceptionally average says the mother didn't tell daycare the child was nonverbal. Yeah, that is right. When she said she didn't fill out a section, she never filled out the special needs section. Well, I don't know. I don't know whether if they were nonverbal, she would fill out the special needs section. I mean, she may just not have any special requirements. That, is being nonverbal a special requirement? I would say so, yes. Would somebody fill out a special requirement with nonverbal? Not necessarily. I don't know about that. I don't know. That is a bit weird, though. Everything about this is weird. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is a normal situation. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Oh, your best buddy? That's so cute, Andrew. That's awesome. That's awesome. And Jess says, this reminds me of my brother's complicated journey learning how to talk. Yeah, and some kids have real big problems. Some kids don't. Like I said, I'm on the spectrum, and I never shut up, which was a bit of a problem as well, I guess, because I wouldn't really be, that social thing of having a conversation really wasn't my forte, I must admit. Tony says, if I was parents, I'd be ecstatic the kid is speaking. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very, very strange that they're not very chuffed. They're kind of in denial about them speaking. Do they want them to speak? It's very strange. So yeah, absolutely reporting it. How did you guys vote? I want to know. I want to know poster is acted morally. Yeah, I agree. In fact, I really like this person. Like, I mean, there's been times on this thing that I've gone, all right, well, they've acted morally. That's fine. But this time I'm like, that is a really good daycare worker. Like, seriously, they're going above and beyond. You know, it would be easy for this daycare worker to go, okay, you think they're nonverbal, then they're nonverbal. I don't give a shit, right? Like they could easily do that. And they're not. They're like, well, they are verbal, and I've got to let the parents understand this because that's what's best for the child, like to the detriment of themselves. Like, I really like them because they're not just going, well, if you want to think they're nonverbal, you keep thinking that, and I don't care because I'm getting the money. She's not doing that. She's actually going above and beyond, and I respect it. Not only do I think she's moral, I respect it, that she's actually doing something more moral, which is conveying this information at personal cost. Salute. Big salute to you. I'm sorry, peeps. I'm going to call it there. I'm finding it a bit hard to go on, and my voice is sort of a bit scratchy. So I'm going to call it there. It has been 2.5 hours. Wow. All right. But thank you so much for joining me. This has actually been a good one. I've really liked that last one, actually. It was kind of like, it's nice to, like, you see so much news about daycare workers, you know, being absolutely horrible to children and abusing them both verbally and emotionally and stuff, that you go like, oh, all daycare out there. No, there's some really lovely people working in daycare out there who really care about the kids under their charge, right? They actually do care. And they're professional. You know, they are professionals. They do the best job they can in a professional manner. And we've got to remember that, because we only see the unprofessional, horrible, fast food workers and the police that are abusing their powers and all the worst of it. We've got to remember the majority of humans out there are good people who are doing their best to help everybody around them, okay? Don't forget that. You know, humans are not all what you see on the news. Most people out there will help you if you ask for help, or they will try to do the most professional thing they can in their work. It's just with news and stuff, we just see the worst. And a lot of cops are like that. All they see is criminals and things like that, so they assume the worst. It's really good to see, police out there that do try to help, and they are doing the right thing and they are doing their jobs correctly. I think we need to highlight that a lot more, and the bad people a lot less. Show that, hey, there are some amazing people out there. So I've really liked this sort of, that last story. It kind of is, faith in humanity, well, not restored, but at least repaired a little bit. Let's face it. Let's say it's been repaired a little bit with a wonderful childcare worker who is taking the slings and arrows to try to do the best for obviously a little girl having trouble under her care. Really nice. But thank you so much, everybody. Don't forget, be kind to yourself. If you make a mistake and do something, it's okay. It is moral to make amends and, sort of say to the party, hey, I didn't mean to embarrass anybody. I am sorry. I realize it's unprofessional. We all make mistakes. That's okay. That's not immoral to make a mistake. It is immoral to refuse to own that and pretend like you've done nothing wrong when you have. That's where we need to step up and say, hey, that's okay. It's all right. But be kind to yourself. Be kind to each other. And I will see you in the next one. Take care, gang.
This old switchboard could talk. Wow. Your ears would sizzle. 1880. We take Alexander Graham Bell's invention for granted today. Perhaps we should. But isn't it incredible that millions and millions of people can talk simultaneously to practically any spot on Earth?